Thank you for listening to the Conform to Christ podcast, where we seek to engage the mind, affect the heart, and call people to follow Christ. My name is George Mays. Here with me is Jay Jones.
Good morning.
This is Text Driven Tuesday.
Yep.
We took off last week for Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving, Jay?
Yeah, we did. It was pretty good. Went up to my grandma's house, and all the family came out. She's 96.
I saw on Facebook that your dad did a Thanksgiving devotional. Does he do that every year?
Yeah, he'll usually say just something real brief and then pray.
Yeah.
He'll like a little moment of silence for the people that died recently.
Okay.
Yep. So.
Very good.
Yeah. Yep. What'd you guys do?
Went to my in-laws. Got to just kind of relax at my in-laws' house.
Cool.
Eat some good food.
Yeah.
It was a good weekend until came home and some of the kids got sick. So that's always fun.
That's life, though. Kids are just sick all the time.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. It's part of growing up.
Yeah. I'm terrible with sick kids.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like throw up.
Oh, no. That kind? That's terrible.
Just slowly back
Poor
out
kids.
of the room.
Poor kids, yeah. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
They seem better now.
That's good.
But it's always good to hear a sermon that you need to hear.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad this was able to help you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a good reminder. We don't really plot out our preaching, and there's no way that you can match up sermons with all of the life situations of people.
Yeah.
But it's just a reminder that as we're committed to expositional preaching through books of the Bible, just chapter by chapter, verse by verse, that God in His providence, He just lines up the situations that people are in with the passages, and they
yeah, that's right.
I've heard the criticism of expositional preaching that it doesn't cover, it's not topical, so it doesn't deal with topics that people are dealing with. But that simply has not been my experience at all with expositional preaching. Expository preaching, it is topical. It's just not the preacher's preferred topics always.
Yeah, you're not picking the top. You're gonna just do whatever is in the text at the time. Right. So, yeah, I wish that I had written down all of the times like something happened providentially. So providence, if you're listening, is just that we believe that God is sovereign over everything, and that includes the movements of people, the plans that you have, and your preaching, like all of this, and has arranged things as a way that He sees fit. So God's doing the choosing on the given day, really.
Right.
Preaching professor once said that it is the height of hubris to be a preacher who never preaches expositionally, because what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I know what these people need, and I'll pick the topics.
Right.
And I was like, I kind of get what he's driving at.
Right.
Because, like I said, I wish that I had written all these down. There are so many, but one of the most drastic was, I can't remember what text I was preaching, but we had a visitor. It was over at Redeemer for the merger, and we had a guest, and so I'm just preached this passage, and it's very high sovereignty passage, God's control of all things and things like that, because that's what was in the text. Yeah. Like before that, I had preached who knows how many 40 sermons that had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And this guy afterward, he's almost like, he's kind of teary-eyed, and he was like, I was just over there at the grocery store, and somebody at your church said, hey, what are you doing this morning? What if you just came to church? And he's like, I'm not even from here. I'm just visiting wherever because, my wife just died.
Mm.
And he's like, that's exactly what I needed to hear.
Mm.
And if you'd have told me before, like, there's going to be a guy coming whose wife just died a few days ago,
Right.
I might have second-guessed
Some of the things you were saying.
preaching the way that I did.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I had no clue.
Mm.
And then there, of course, just the numerous times for just the people who are members of the church.
Yeah.
That the same thing. We should start writing them down.
Yeah.
We should start writing all of them down because there's like coincidence. No, there's no way.
Right.
These things are pure coincidence.
Yeah. Well, that's what the passage was about yesterday.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess we can just jump right in. Right.
Okay.
You started your sermon with an illustration about boll weevils.
Did you like that? Oh man.
Yeah.
The boll weevil. Yeah.
I didn't catch what year that was. What year was that?
1915, I think, is when it arrived.
Okay.
I can check. Let me check in my notes. Yeah, 1915.
Okay.
Boll weevil arrives in Enterprise, Alabama. It's a big cotton industry.
Yeah.
And this is it's an invasive species of beetle from Mexico, South America, and it just destroyed all the cotton. The farmers, they had nothing. This is their whole life, and it happened 2 years in a row. So they tried it 2 years in a row. Third year, some people tried. They switched it up. They said, we got to try something else. Let's try peanuts. And peanuts were like, the ground, I guess, was just primed for peanuts, and it just exploded. And they made more money than they could ever dream of.
Yeah.
So they made a statue.
So they made a statue. Yeah, I actually pulled up the statue. If Larry, if you want to change over to my screen,
there it is.
There's the statue.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife said that she's actually been there. She's seen the statue. Yeah.
Yeah. They made a little inscription. It says, in profound appreciation of the boll weevil and what it has done as the herald of prosperity.
Yeah.
This monument was erected by the citizens of Enterprise, Alabama. Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
It's got to be, I don't know if it's the only, it's the first monument to a pest. Yeah.
Yeah.
But point was, you're gonna have adversity in life.
Right.
You don't know how it's gonna come or like what shape it's gonna take, but it's gonna happen. And when it happens, you don't have the ability to see out of it.
Right.
Like you can't see even in past today.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the perspective to be able to see what's going on with that adversity. So of course you can't possibly see any good that could come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
All you can see is bad.
Right.
And that's what it started with. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is kind of a switch in topics in Ecclesiastes. So the last time we were in Ecclesiastes, we were talking about money, right? So now we're talking about adversity.
Yeah.
Is there any logical connection, or is he just switching topics?
I think maybe the only thread that would kind of hold them together would be a person who has true wisdom will take these things to heart.
Okay.
And listen.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's have you read the passage.
All right. Let me pull it up.
Did I catch you off guard? You didn't.
No,
you didn't know we were talking about.
I got the wrong text up
you
here
didn't know
now.
we were talking about your sermon from
Ecclesiastes.
From yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I had it up, and I had up the NASB.
I got you.
But I can't switch things up like that on people. I've been reading from the ESV on this program, so I'll stay with it.
Okay.
All right, I got it up. Okay, Ecclesiastes 6:10, and I'll read through 7:14. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. The more words, the more vanity, and what is the advantage to man? For who knows what is good for man, while he lives the few days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? For who can tell man what will be after him under the sun? A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death better than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of the thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of fools. This is also vanity. Surely oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools. Say not, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Consider the work of God. Who can make straight what he has made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful, and in the day of adversity consider God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him. There you go.
All right. So the main point is that there is you're going to experience adversity.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come whether you like it or not.
Right.
Even someone that has never experienced adversity, they've experienced a pretty easy life, they will at some point
Yes.
face adversity. And so this passage is meant to show us that we need to have wisdom in preparation for the day of adversity. Verse 14, you said, is kind of that's like the main verse. It leads up to that that the day of good,
right,
and the day of evil. God has made both of them. And so, how are we going to respond when adversity comes?
Right. That's it.
Yeah,
you got it.
So what there are different ways that people can respond to adversity, right? Because we all this isn't just a Christian thing. This is everybody who's ever lived is going to experience some form of adversity,
right?
And so we have options laid out before us.
Yeah, I mean there may be some others, but I think there's kind of some main categories. Some people, even people that would profess to be Christians, they'll face adversity and they'll do it like a pagan. And what I mean by pagan is not like you might be thinking, this is someone who's not a believer entirely, but that's not what I mean by when I say pagan. See, a pagan really believes in gods. They just believe if they do the right things, the gods will bless them. So adversity can strike, and even the person that is professing to be a Christian can then approach or respond like a pagan, and they'll think, well, bad things have happened to me because I wasn't good. I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
If I had been better, then the bad thing wouldn't have happened to me, and God would have blessed me. And you can't do that. Like I said, that's a pagan way of looking at suffering and pain.
We saw that several years ago with Eckhart Tolle. You remember the big Eckhart Tolle craze?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know what that
is.
is.
Law of Attraction.
Okay.
Yeah. The what was it called? What was the name of that book?
Power of Positive Thinking?
No. The Secret. It's called The Secret. And this blew up, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Okay.
Oprah was pushing it.
Okay.
The Secret, the Law of Attraction.
Right.
So if you declare, you can speak, and you're attracting things. People would make their vision boards,
right,
about things that they wanted. And if you speak negative things, negative things will happen. So you need to speak positive things. But this was just the paganism that you're talking about. But the Word of Faith has Christianized that pagan,
big time,
law of attraction.
Yeah, and we'll have to deal with more of this next week as he kind of takes another angle on looking at Religion, I guess you could call it religion and the righteousness of man, perhaps. It's interesting passage, that difficult one for sure. For sure. I already have a headache. Larry came in, I was in there, I'm studying, and I said, Larry, I need a break already.
Yeah.
It's Monday morning. I already need a break.
Well, if we'll hold off on the discussion of that, but if you're living that way and adversity comes, then your response is going to be, well, I've been attracting these negative things to myself, or I haven't done enough.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done enough good, and you can fall into despair because adversity has
Right.
come, right?
Yeah.
And it's my fault,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you could be. I was thinking of atheist
Mm-hmm.
and how they would deal with adversity.
I think they deal with it like a deist,
Yeah.
honestly. Now, they don't
Okay.
articulate it out loud, but, well, some of them do because they're mad at God.
Right.
Like, this is the type of thing, when, who was it? It wasn't Richard Dawkins. It was the other guy, the one who's kind of a loud, he was kind of a loud mouth. Hitchens. It was Hitchens.
Hitchens. Okay.
It was Hitchens. He's like, if I ever talk to God, I'll say to him, "Cancer, how dare you?"
Yeah.
Well, that's what he really believes.
Right.
Like, he's
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows there's a God. This is Romans chapter 1. They suppress the truth in unrighteousness. But when something really bad happens, it's strange, isn't it, George, how they get really mad at God, even those that don't believe in him.
Right.
Isn't that an odd thing? But yeah, but there are those who maybe aren't outright atheists. Maybe they're agnostic. But even professing believers can fall into this category, that God is there. He just doesn't care. He's not good.
Yeah.
Like, he's let the universe go. He's not involved. He doesn't really care one way or the other. Of course, then that just makes people bitter and angry. So Christians can even fall into that. God doesn't care about me.
Right.
And then, of course, you can face it like a Christian, like a believer.
Yeah.
Someone who has faith. So
this passage is meant to help us to face adversity like a believer, like a Christian.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll walk through it. We'll talk through this. You said that you outlined this as 3 lessons about wisdom and adversity for your life.
Right.
Which you emphasize for your life, because
Right.
this is not just kind of this general knowledge for people.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is meant for you,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to face adversity.
Right.
So before that happens,
Yeah.
you have to be prepared for adversity. This is not a reactive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the thing that they tell people, when you're in school, or even, when you're, it's just a practical thing. If somebody's like suffering, right, that's not the time to go up and throw your arm around them and be like, you know what, buddy, this is actually for your good.
Right.
That's not the time.
Right. Yeah.
The time for that's before it happens.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then when someone's suffering, that's just time to be their friend.
Right.
You don't want to be Job's friends.
Uh-huh.
You just want to be a friend.
Right.
And be there with them. That's it. So get it.
Job's friends who were living like pagans, right?
Right.
Oh, Job, you're suffering because
for real. I mean,
because of your sin.
They are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's looking around like,
Yeah.
What what sin are you guys talking about?
Right.
Perplexed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So beforehand, you want to have these truths kind of settled.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible explicitly teaches these truths. Now, you might object to them. People object to these truths all the time. But they're explicitly taught. So see what they say, what the Bible says about these things, and then believe them beforehand. Or else, I don't really know how someone who doesn't believe these goes through things. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. Well, as we're walking through it, this is a high sovereignty passage, right? I think that for a lot of Christians that would not articulate these truths in the same way as we who are reformed would, I think they still live kind of in a inconsistent way.
Mm.
Because they still would say God's in control. He's got a plan for you,
Right.
things like that.
Yeah.
Which can only be true if the way that you're teaching this is true.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that there's just this kind of inconsistency that we
Yeah.
have to deal with.
You know, I was teaching Sunday school yesterday, and wouldn't you know, a pure coincidence, it happened to be the class was called The Plan of God. Pure coincidence, of course, George. Yeah, I didn't plan it.
Right.
Didn't plan it at all. You taught last week and this week, and that's how I started the class. I'm like, hey, when people say, you guys ever hear somebody say, well, God's got a plan for your life? Like, what context is that usually in? And it's usually something bad's happened.
Yeah.
So everybody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And people that aren't even like
right.
churchgoers will say that.
Yeah.
Which is, isn't it weird that type of knowledge seems to be just built into us?
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, let's look at these three things for us about wisdom and adversity. The first one is found in verses 10 through 12 of chapter 6. This is two wisdoms in conflict in your life.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Now, he doesn't come right out and say it.
Okay.
This is what's difficult about the way that, at least I think difficult for us because we're so far removed from this style. Like, this is a style that's foreign to us.
Right.
But this passage is really framed around the words Adam. It's four times it's used in these verses. The name, it's a name.
Right.
Adam. And so, of course, then you have to at least ask, is this a reference to Genesis? And I think it's not just, a slight reference. I think it's an overt reference. But really what he is getting at, as you'll see as this unfolds, is there are two competing wisdoms in your life at all times. There's wisdom from God. That's the wisdom that comes down from above. So in the New Testament, that's what it's called, the wisdom that comes down from above, or the wisdom of God. And then there's another wisdom. There's the wisdom of this age, wisdom of the world, and that wisdom is called earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. I found the last phrase to be very interesting, considering the first temptation.
Right.
And so we come to the passage. I think what this passage answers for us here in the very, very beginning is where all adversity comes from, kind of the origin of it all. Whether it's self-inflicted suffering, because we just do stupid stuff because we're sinners and we bring pain upon ourselves, or it's being sinned against by someone else, or it's a natural they call it natural evil, man-made disasters, sicknesses, things like that, or it could be even natural tornadoes, whatever. All types of adversity and suffering, they come back to this original question of who gets to determine what is good for man. And you can see that's here in the passage. Who knows what is good for man? That's kind of the question that this next entire section is getting at. And we say man, like that's how we answer the question.
Right. Well, going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, the idea that preachers don't preach book by book through the Bible because, well, I've got to hit these topics.
Right.
Like I know what they need better than
right. Right. Yeah.
Than God does. That
Right.
I mean, they wouldn't say that. They
Yeah.
wouldn't even be thinking it, but just in a practical way, that's how they're living. Right? But that's the way that we all do. We all think that we know best.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. This is the original question. This is really what's going on there in the garden. And so as he kind of moves through this very strong allusion to the garden. He starts with a profound statement, very, very strong theological statement. I don't maybe even know a way that it could be framed in a stronger way. Whatever has come to be has already been named. And so then the question you ask is like, does that mean what I think it means? And it does, right? It does. If we said it in plain English, we'd say, whatever happens in the present has been predetermined.
Mm.
So to name a thing is to, as we know from the Bible, to have authority and power.
Mm.
And this is what God does. He creates, he names day, night, land. He names everything except for lets Adam name the animals, which is interesting because man's over the animals,
right.
has authority over animals. Sorry to PETA and all of the listeners there, all of the vegans.
He names his wife too, but maybe we don't want
Oh,
to go
no,
down
George.
that. Maybe we don't want to go down that road this morning.
George, are you saying you're complementarian? So this strong statement is what starts the discussion on adversity. I just find it incredibly interesting. There's no beating around the bush with what is said. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens in the present has been predetermined by God. And that's important because when you go into adversity, you're going to start to ask these questions like, what's happening? Is God in control? Does he even care? Does he know what's going on? Is he even paying attention? Or, has he left us? Outside of the garden, he's cast us east of Eden, outside of the garden. Are we in control? Like, do we have sovereignty and authority now? And he's just watching?
That's... I didn't take any time to go and find actual quotes. But did you know that the Word of Faith movement actually says that in the fall, God lost authority over the earth?
I did. Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
So it's authority over the earth has been given to the devil now because of Adam's sin. So God doesn't have authority. So he had to sneak Jesus in as
he's like a Trojan horse.
Right. In order to win back.
Right. To take it back.
Authority.
Crazy. It's a crazy theology, man. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
I heard it on the radio. I think the guy here in town.
Oh, really?
Over there. Yeah. He's a Kenneth Copeland. He was mentored by that guy, Kenneth Copeland, I believe. So, yeah. But here's the idea. Even east of Eden, you may look around and see oppression and injustice and things may be going on, but God is still God. Whatever happens because God said so. And
this is an important distinction. We talked about this on a free-for-all, I don't know, a month ago, about open theism. We were talking about open theism, and that God is not. He knows the future. So against open theism, he knows what is going to happen. But even more important is that God is he's not just a fortune teller.
Right.
He's not just looking down into the future to see what's going to happen.
Right.
Because of God's omniscience, his omnipresence, his eternality, his immutability, his aseity, all of these characteristics about who God is. He doesn't look into the future. That's not what this passage says. Right? Whatever exists has already been named.
Right.
So
God, beforehand.
So God ordains the future. He doesn't learn the future, he ordains the future.
Of course that can be difficult for people who are going through suffering. And and the reason that is because we're just a man, which this proves the point all the more for the next thing that he says. And it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. You can't see past, like I said, you can't see past 5 minutes from now. Forget tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen at the end of this podcast.
I don't know what's going to happen in this podcast.
Yeah.
and that's been proven
Yeah.
true
Yeah.
time and time again.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Sometimes
but
we
this
don't
is
even know if the podcast
that's
is
true.
recording while we're talking, and we have to go back and start all over.
Yeah. But this is where our anxiety comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Us trying to fix the future,
Right.
trying to make sure that we get the outcome that we want.
Yeah.
But we don't know from moment to moment what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know if this podcast is even going to be completed.
right.
I mean, the ceiling could fall on us
Could.
in this building. That's
It's a
It's not
possibility.
a hyperbole. So we don't know what's going to come after, but the hope that we have, the encouragement we have, is that God is already there, right?
Right. Yeah. So we're just in the very beginning of these passages. Just think about what we've encountered already. God is sovereign over everything. Whatever exists, like whatever exists now, has already been named, and you're just a man. It's known what man is. Well, what is known about man? Man is a created being. Genesis 1-3. Man is not the creator. He is a finite created being of the dust. And then after Genesis chapter 3, God tells him, "You're of the dust, and to the dust you will return." So right off the bat, we're getting put into our proper place. And what's needed really when you're facing adversity is, I think, to take a posture of humility, to admit that you're not God, that you don't know what this is for. You maybe just admit you don't understand it, but to admit your own limitation. You are just a man. You're just a man or a woman. You're a creature. You had a beginning, and one day you'll have an end. But there's someone who doesn't have a beginning and doesn't have an end and has appointed this day. And just because you can't understand it doesn't mean that these things are not true. So that's the place where you have to start, and that's where Solomon starts. And we can't dispute with God. So verse 10 kind of gets at something that would happen when you enter adversity. Can you dispute with one stronger than you? Even another human. You can't, right? You can't even dispute with another human stronger than you. Well, how much more God? Can you dispute with the infinite God? The distance between us is vast. It's indescribable. Can you contend with him? And the answer is no. He's asking these questions that have obvious answers. You can't. Adam tried. And that's really the origin of where all of this happens. Adam tried. Adam and Eve, they tried. Eve, she saw that the fruit, it was desirable to make one wise, right? So that's her temptation. She wants wisdom, but here's the irony, is that she already has wisdom.
Right.
God's already told her. True wisdom is wisdom which comes from God. God has already told her, here's how you live in this perfect world that I've made. I've made a world that's perfect, given you everything. I live and be with you. You'll get to be in my presence. You can have anything in the world. Eat anything you want. You can't eat that one tree, because when you eat of it, you're going to die. All right, that's wisdom from above. That's how you live in God's world, and you thrive and you prosper. How is Eve tempted? She's tempted because she thinks if she eats that fruit, she's going to have some type of wisdom that she doesn't have. So she's seeking a wisdom from below. And that's the two wisdoms that are in competition. Men contending with God over this question. Who can say what is good for man? That's what he raises in verse 12. For who knows what is good for man? And man's answer from the beginning, from the time of Adam and Eve in the garden, has been, well, we know God's told us what's good for us, but we want to be the ones that say what's good for us.
Right.
And so the two wisdoms are in conflict. And I think that's the picture that's painted in these 10 through 12. I think that's he's trying to bring out here,
Mm.
because the main driving question is that who knows what is good for man? And the answer is only God.
Mm.
Only God knows. And I think that, the story that we see play out right before our eyes, even it's this, not just of us, but really of all of human history, is man saying, we know what's good for us. I mean, you go to every different culture through time, and you'll find a whole host of answers to this question: what's good for human living? I mean, you have all kinds of crazy stuff. You've got the Mayans over here tearing people's hearts out on that pyramid by the thousands, and they think that's good.
Right.
Well, who were the conquistadors to tell them it wasn't good? The conquistadors have a different idea of what's good. You go over to the far north of Europe, and you've got my ancestors doing crazy stuff. They're tripping on shrooms, thinking that's good, going into some type of a bear, thinking they're becoming a bear, like running around and ransacking and pillaging. Pure, utter madness. We think this is madness. Well, they say, what are you talking about, man? Like, this is good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is history. And look where we are today. Where are we today?
Right.
Everything God said is good in chapters 1 through 3. We are in America, like in a race to see who can undo all of that.
Mm.
So has God designed sex to be good? Yes. Well, how many ways can we pervert it? That's like, well, we'll say what's good, and we'll create any number of things. Is marriage between a man and a woman good? Well, let's redefine that. How about man and woman themselves? Well, we know what's good for us, so let's redefine all of that.
Yeah.
Let's change society again. And who's to say in another 500 years? I mean, who knows what it could be? Maybe society will say, you know what? It's not even good to have babies. Let's only have babies in a synthetic womb. We'll have like a warehouse where you can just come in and pick out how you want your baby to be. You don't have to worry about being pregnant. None of that. That's no problem. And there you go. So who knows, right? That's the point.
Yeah.
Who knows? And the question is, or the answer to the question is obvious. Only God knows. God can tell us what's good for us. Will we listen? That's really the question.
I was looking for this quote while you were talking, because I had like you ever have like the pieces of the quote, but you don't have the exact quote. Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
This is John Flavel, Puritan. He says, "Providence is wiser than you, and you may be confident it has suited all things better to your eternal good than you could do had you been left to your own option." Like that.
Mm-hmm.
We think that we know best. This is where all of our anxiety is coming from, is trying to control the future. We're trying to control all of these uncontrollable things.
Mm-hmm.
But God's providence is wiser than us. There is immense freedom and joy and peace in just trusting God, just throwing all of our dependence upon Him, knowing that He is all wise, He's all powerful, He loves us, and He's already predetermined everything that's going to happen.
Right. Yep. And so, as you go through life, there'll be these two competitions that are always before you. It's not, God's wisdom doesn't compete, but in your mind and in your heart, there's a competition because we're prone to sin. And it is this: will I receive wisdom from God, or will I set out on my own and seek the wisdom that comes from the world? And one of them has led to all adversity that's ever existed. So the idea is we don't want to seek that one out. We want to have the wisdom that comes from above,
right?
Which begins with the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, reverence. So to take a posture of reverence for God, which is the exact opposite of what Adam had, or he would have listened. They would have listened.
Right.
So before adversity comes, we have to understand that there are these two competing wisdoms, and they will hit even harder when the day of adversity arrives.
Right. All right. So that's the first one.
That's the first one.
So when we're talking about this high view of God's sovereignty, and that whatever comes into existence has already been named, so we need to pursue this wisdom, that trust in God's sovereignty.
Right.
The criticism could be, well, you guys are just fatalist.
Right.
You're just tossing up your hands and saying, well, whatever God has decreed is going to happen,
right,
regardless. I think the second point that you bring out here balances it out, because there is a balance that the scriptures present. Right. It's not God's decree regardless of whether you get out of bed or not.
Right.
Right. There is human responsibility also. And so the second point is found in chapter 7, and it goes through verse 12. It's that wisdom is essential for living your life.
Right.
So you need to acknowledge and humble yourself, and have the wisdom from above that says that God is sovereign, right, over adversity. But you also need to live a wise life.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't just not stop at the red light.
Right.
Because you're like, whatever will be, will be.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
So God has given us wisdom,
right.
Wisdom from above, so that we can live godly lives. Right.
Yeah.
So we've got verses 1 through 12, and I think these will be fun to walk through. It's it's Solomon. He breaks out into some proverbs. Right?
He does. Yeah. You can see it in your Bible. Well, most Bibles, I think, will offset this text in a way that you can see that these are now proverbial statements, and what he teaches here in these verses is wisdom where it may be found, which comes from surprising sources. Where can wisdom be found? What does a wise person look like, and its superiority, I guess you could say. Those are the kind of the three main sections that are here. And he sets it up in better than statements. That's the way he presents it. So if you read it, you're going to encounter it. This is better than that. This is better than that. That's better than this. And that's the way he does it as he moves through.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so verses 1 through 4, you kind of lump those together.
Hang on, George.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I asked the question.
Oh, yeah.
Or I said, there are better than statements. And I gave mine. I said, there's the argument. And I know your boy likes basketball. LeBron or Michael Jordan, who's better than who? I answered Jordan.
Yeah.
What is your answer?
I would say Jordan. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying Jordan's a nice guy or a good guy because, I think probably
he's pretty conceited.
Yeah.
His Hall of Fame
speech
is one of the cringiest things.
That Hall of Fame speech, which he says in there, I think he even says he feels lost without basketball.
He does, yeah.
But he torched his high school coach. Did you see that?
It was very vindictive.
Oh yeah, because he cut him.
Yeah.
But if Jordan would have had the wisdom of God, the wisdom from above, he would have understand that him being cut was the fuel that made him great.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
He could have been thankful for God's providence in his life.
Yes.
Here he is, the best basketball player of all time.
If the guy wouldn't have cut him, he wouldn't be what it was.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Well, God's providence is not just working for believers; it's working for in the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And what is really a comfort, and we need to talk this way more. The Puritans spoke this way. The Reformers spoke this way. That God's providence is how He is working all things for the church.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that the world is governed will ultimately benefit believers, and that God has created the world for Christ and His church.
You're right.
And that means that everything that happens will ultimately be for the glory of Christ and for the good of His church.
Mm-hmm.
So we can be thankful in all things that happen.
Right.
Right. All things that happen in history are for the good of the church. Now, how does Jordan's being? How's Michael Jordan's life being providentially governed? How is that going to be for the glory of God and for the church? Well, we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, you can you can glorify God in that He's made people capable of doing such amazing things.
Yeah.
Another
Flavel quote is that providence is like reading Hebrew. You have to read it backwards.
Backwards.
Yeah. You have to read it backwards.
That's right.
Right. So.
Yeah.
All right. So better than. You got any more better
thans?
Better thans.
Well, so Thanksgiving
football is better than football.
Football. Yeah. Yeah. I heard that the U.S. was chanting it's called soccer. Was that true? Is that true? It's called soccer.
I've heard some things, but I haven't actually watched any videos.
Because I think all around the world they call it football.
Yeah.
Football.
Yeah.
Well, on Thanksgiving, George, what do you prefer, pecan pie or pumpkin pie?
I prefer pumpkin pie.
Okay. Like I said, it all depends.
I'll eat a pecan pie.
I love pumpkin pie too, but it depends on, like I said, who made the pecan pie. It really does. I said, people may laugh. They think that, this is a joke. I guess it's maybe funny, but it's just true. If the lady made it says pecan pie, then you better get some of that. Yeah. Because it's going to be good.
Yeah.
You ever had a really good pecan pie?
My grandmother makes a really good one.
Okay.
Now, my mother-in-law makes a good one, but the reason I don't eat it is because I know my father-in-law loves her pecan pie, and so I just don't eat it out of
you just
respect for him. I let him eat it because there's a pumpkin pie over here, and he doesn't.
I hope he listens.
He doesn't really eat the pumpkin pie, so
I hope he listens to the podcast.
I'll eat the pumpkin.
And he can hear how much you actually care.
I'll eat the pumpkin pie and leave the pecan pie. But my grandmother, she makes a really good pecan pie, and I don't know. Now I'll have to listen the next time I hear her say it. I think she says pecan.
I told you,
but I don't know. Now I'm second guessing it. I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't want someone like from France making my pecan pie. Would you like a pecan pie? Like, no. I don't want a pecan pie. What you talking about? What? Pecan pie. Okay. Oh. George, you got to come back to us.
I don't know how to go on after that.
Oh.
That's a proverb in its
yeah.
Okay, so all right,
got to reset mentally. George.
I know. I got.
All right. Solomon uses a series of better thans. Better than we use better than statements all the time. Solomon's using some better.
I did enjoy your. I enjoyed your little story about being at physical therapy with Drake.
Yeah,
and you prefer physical books. I agree.
I do. I
prefer physical books.
I like.
There's just something. There's no substitute for an actual real book.
Yeah.
I know that we live in a time that we can pull up our Bible on our phone or read a book on Kindle, but having the actual Bible, a physical Bible, there's just no.
Yeah.
There's just no comparison.
I'm with you.
But you had your story of reading a book at Drake's physical therapy.
Yeah, yeah.
That was pretty good.
You like that? Or you wanted me to retell it?
Well, I was wondering about this book that you were reading.
I'm reading a book called Satan Cast Out. It's a book on demonology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who wrote this?
I don't remember the name.
Okay.
I got it's in there. I'm not done with it. So
where did you hear about this book?
I was listening to a podcast on the same topic. So I'm thinking about teaching a Sunday school class on it.
Okay.
And there was a list of resources in there, one of which was the Christian Incomplete Armor, which I've been trying to get my hands on a hardback copy of that, which is apparently hard to find. You can get them in the regular, paperback reprinted, but I'm looking for a hardback because it's a big there's like 3 volumes.
Yeah,
Christian Incomplete Armor.
I had one. I think I have a hardback. It's a gigantic book, Jay. Are you sure you want this?
I want it. I want it really bad.
Okay.
That's the things we want these days.
Mm-hmm.
How funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting there reading physical therapy and this just minding my own business. That's if I'm going to wait somewhere more than 5 minutes, I usually have a book.
Yeah.
This lady comes up and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, what are you talking about?" She's like, "Is that a real book?" Yes, this is a real book. She's like, "I haven't seen anybody read a real book in years. They're always reading ebooks, and she was like, I think a little too friendly. I think you shouldn't be that friendly with people of the opposite sex. Maybe I misinterpreted it. But so I take the book up to my nose and I smell it. And she can see what it is. And she backed away pretty quick. Backed away pretty quick after that, George. But that's part of reading a book. In my view, you may think I'm weird, but books have their own smell.
They have a good smell.
You can't smell your tablet.
You get a new like really nice Bible with like goat skin leather.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, Jay.
Even your own Bible.
That's good. All right.
It's got its own smell. Your own personal Bible, that should smell like your home.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like your family.
If you keep your Bible in a kitchen while family's baking for Thanksgiving, maybe your Bible will smell like pecan pie.
Maybe so. It's a good idea. Good idea.
Is there anyone still listening to
I
this
don't know.
thing? I don't even know where we are anymore.
I don't know.
Ecclesiastes 7.
Yeah.
The first 4 verses, Jay.
The first 4 verses, George, they kind of contain a theme, and here's the theme. And it's when you read them, you're going to say, this doesn't seem right to me, what he's saying, but here's the theme. Reflection is better than escapism. I think if you understand it through that lens, that this is what he's driving at, reflection is better than escapism, well, then you'll get it, okay?
Yeah.
Because he starts with an easy little proverb, one that you're not going to say, that can't be. A good name's better than precious ointment and perfume. Everyone would say, right on, gotcha, we agree. Because what is it to be rich and wealthy if nobody trusts you or likes you? But it'd be better to be poor and have everyone trust you. Think you're a person of integrity, obviously. So he sets you up. It's like he sets you up almost, and then he drops these little gems on you. The day of death is better than the day of birth. Like, hang on a second. Like, what's going on here? How can that be? How could it be? I mean, when your child is born, you remember the birth of your children?
Oh yeah.
You can't like ever forget them. You can't ever forget that. Now I forget in all kinds of days in between.
Yeah.
But you can't forget that day.
Right.
That's one of the happiest days of your life. But how could it possibly be that the day of death is better than that?
Yeah.
It's so strange.
Do you want to go through all 4 verses before we come back to that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Better to go to the house of mourning than the house of feasting. Same thing, right? Again, how does this add up? Sorrow is better than laughter. Through sadness, the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fools is in the house of myrrh. Again, and we're asking, how can that possibly be? So they all share the same theme,
right?
About the day of death being better than the day of birth, mourning better than laughter. All of these things.
All right, so verses 2 through 4, I get those. Let's talk about that. Better is the day of one's death than the day of one's birth.
Where at?
What? Well, you preached it, Jay. End of verse 1.
Okay, yeah.
What's
The day of death.
could you explain that one? I think that we can hit verses 2 through 4 pretty quickly, but that one maybe is a little bit tougher than the other ones.
Okay. It's not settled, first off, whether it's your death, but
Okay. All right.
So one's death. Well, let's say it was. You took it to mean the day of your death is better.
So I'm
than the day of your birth.
using the Legacy Standard right now.
Okay.
And it supplies words in italics.
Right.
And they put one's death and
Right.
and one's birth. So
Right. Yeah.
that's an interpretive.
Right. So if that's the way, and so the ESV reads a little different, but if you take it that way, and that's fine, then that would just seal in the good name, because you don't have a good name until you're dead. It's not really good, because what could happen to you was what happens in the warning that he gives to the wise here.
I gotcha.
Which is, you got to watch out, because even the wise are prone to becoming fools.
Yeah.
So the good name's not done.
Okay.
It's just the beginning of the matter until the day of your death. The day of your death, people can say, "Oh, yeah, man of integrity here."
Yeah. Could it be a more of keep a watch on your life? Don't just rest in your familial status, or may have been born into wealth, or something like that. That you have to live for that death day. You want to end well. It's not how you start; it's how you end.
Right. Yeah. Yes. It could be that. Yeah.
Okay.
That can be the first one, and some will take it that way. The way that I kind of took it is, it doesn't necessarily mean it's your funeral that you're at. The day of death, the funeral, it's like a funeral.
Okay.
Or a day.
Okay.
So while we are prone to think these great days of celebration are better for us, it's actually the days that we don't think. So the days that we think are actually really bad for us, we go to, there's a day of death, and then there's a funeral, house of mourning, all of that. And we are in that time. What Solomon is saying is that's actually better for you than these others. Now, we don't think it is, but it is.
Yeah. I like what you said, that the one thing that happens to us all is the one thing we try to never think about.
Right. Yeah. We never think about it. It's a strange thing, because it happens to every single human, and we never think about this day.
Yeah. We've talked about this, I think, on here before, the kind of the morphing of how our culture deals with death. It used to be that people died in their homes.
Right.
I mean, you'd be in the house while someone in the next room was dying. You would see the dead body. But now you get sick. You go to a hospital. You're in this sterilized building. People don't have to come in and see you. You can die in this cold room.
Yeah.
Right. Nursing homes, we just kind of push people to these places where you don't have to think about it. And so our society has become kind of sterilized to death.
Right. Yeah. And so his answer that he gives kind of comes at the end of verse 2. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. So why is it better? Because these times force you to reflect on your life. You don't really get a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
The birth of your child, incredible happiness. It doesn't really make you wise.
Yeah.
You go to a funeral, it forces reflection. And reflection brings wisdom. Am I loving God? Am I loving my neighbor as myself? Am I caring for my family? I love my wife. Am I a person who has a good name? Person that people trust, that has integrity? What sins am I thinking I've got time to deal with still? I've got time. I'll live till I'm 75. Will you? Maybe you should repent today.
Right.
Maybe you've heard the gospel, tons of times in your life, and you keep thinking, you know what, later I'll be ready to repent and come to Christ. Well, a funeral is going to force you to say, maybe not. Maybe today is the day that you should repent and trust Christ and believe the gospel.
Yeah. That's why Moses wrote, teach us to number our days that we might get a heart of wisdom, right? Psalm 90.
Yep. That's it.
But you've got, better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting.
Yep.
Better is, LSB says, vexation. Sorrow than laughter.
Right.
The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, while the heart of the fools is in the house of gladness. The
other is escapism. That's
right.
what he's telling you.
Right. We want to ignore.
Yes.
We want to ignore the reality of death.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is maybe worse in our generation than any generation before us, because there's never quiet. There's never time for us to stop and just reflect on these things, because there's always, your phone is with you, or the TV's on, or you're on the internet, or you're just always bombarded with other stuff. And so you don't have to think about death.
Right.
If there's a time where you're not doing anything, you just scroll through Facebook.
You're never thinking about your life.
Yeah, you don't think about it.
I follow a number of variety of things on Twitter, different viewpoints, worldviews. Right. So, my Twitter hasn't changed. I guess some people's has from the time Elon took over. Mine really hasn't. Even people that are not Christians recognize the value in having time of silence where you're alone.
Yeah.
And that's what's surprising is, if a non-believer recognizes this, how much more should we? And so, I just read one yesterday. It was like, do these 5 things for 6 months straight, and you'll be unrecognizable to those who know you. Like get up at 5 a.m. Because it's a life hack people don't take advantage of. Get all this stuff done. But one of them was sit quietly for 10 minutes a day alone. And they didn't even say, like, I thought, I was waiting, like, are they going to say, like, meditate or whatever? They didn't. They just said, sit alone, undistracted, for 10 minutes by yourself. Because what happens? Well, you're going to start thinking about it's reflection.
Right.
And funerals make it happen.
Right.
You're not taking your phone out at a funeral.
I mean,
unless you're really disrespectful.
You shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
But people escape it. That's the alternative. Reflection is better than escapism. That's the house of feasting and laughter and whatever.
Right.
People would rather go there and just never think about this other. So wisdom is found in these other places, in these sad places.
Yeah. Well, we probably should just kind of shoot through these.
Okay.
We don't have to have you preach the
right.
sermon over again. Verses 5 through 6. Listen to rebuke.
Yep.
It's better to listen to rebuke. Right. People don't do that very well.
Rebuke's better than praise. Yeah, you don't think if somebody comes up and rebukes you, you're not thinking like, hey, thanks for blessing me today.
Right.
Thanks for the great blessing and helping me to become wise and more godly.
Yeah.
And yet that's better for us.
Right. I did have a question as you were going through this. So better to listen to the rebuke of a wise man than for one to listen to the song of fools. For as the crackling sound of thorn bushes under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. So this never saying anything critical about someone, right? But then he says this too is vanity. What does he mean by bringing in vanity right there?
So vanity can mean different things in different contexts. It can mean, empty. Right. Probably a combination of empty and fleeting.
Okay.
And the reason that probably could be is because the illustration of thorns under a pot.
Okay.
So if you want to make a stew, you're going to cook it maybe for hours. You got to have real wood.
Right.
But what do you use to get the fire started?
Okay.
Thorns. That's the flame. It'll shoot up in a flame, make a big hot flash for a while, and then it's just gone.
Right.
And so probably just it's fleeting.
The compliments
are fleeting.
Compliments are fleeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Verse 7. I just kind of labeled these. I don't know if they fit with what with the labels that you gave them, but not a lover of money.
Right.
So not being kind of what you talked about in chapter 6, not being controlled by money. Verse 8, someone who's patient.
Right.
Right. Verse 9, slow to anger. Verse 10, I like verse 10. I like verse 10. I think that's
yeah.
good. Do not say, why is it that the former days were better than these?
For it's not from wisdom that you ask this. Yeah, it's unwise.
So don't live in the past.
Yeah, people live in the past.
Yeah. We see that with people that long for the good old days. That was one of the criticisms of Donald Trump's campaign.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
because
make America great again.
Make America great again. It was. I understand the political strategy, but the weakness of that message, as you can see, the weakness of it and how it's been exploited by the other side.
Yeah.
And what I found to be interesting is in a commentary written, who knows how long before Donald Trump, probably like 50 years before he ever, had aspirations to do much of anything in life. Commentary brought that out. They say, you be careful to think that the former days were the good old days because they weren't for everybody.
Right.
I was like, oh man. And that's what they used that phrase against him in their own,
right?
Because it wasn't the good old days for a lot of people. Of course, that's not what he meant. I don't believe. I think they've twisted. Twisted it in a way he never meant.
Campaign slogans are easily twisted,
right? And so, of course, they'll say, well, yeah, it was a good old day for you. It was always the good days for you. You're white male.
Right.
It wasn't for women. It wasn't for minorities. You want to go backwards. And so, but you got to be careful too. I mean, even we're not talking about political stuff, because for the Christian, you can't ever say that.
Yeah.
If you're a Christian right now, the past is always the bad old days. And tomorrow and the day before that are always the good days that are coming. Right. They have to be, or else sanctification is not real.
Yeah. Well, I think that we could even, put it into Solomon's context. The days of Solomon's reign were times of unparalleled prosperity and peace for the nation of Israel. But even that is not the promise that God gave to Abraham.
Right.
Right. This would bring blessings to the entire world.
Yes.
That the Messiah would come, that the promise of Genesis 3:15 would be fulfilled. So even as great as Solomon's kingdom is, that's not the hope.
Right.
The hope is not backwards, it's forwards.
And it's, if you just think about it for a minute, it's just another way to escape the present.
Yeah.
You're indulging some fantasy of the past. You're escaping the present. That's not wise. Live in the present moment.
Yeah.
This is here. It's gone. I mean, the past doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
So wise people, they don't do that. They live in the present moment that they have.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good advice.
Yeah. And then 11 and 12 is wisdom is better than money. Yeah.
So the comparison is money can provide you protections in a world prone to adversity.
Yeah.
If you have money and you have inheritance, you have land, you've got some stability in your life, even when bad things happen, you've got that type of protection. So wisdom's like that. Wisdom can protect you in the way that wealth can, but it's better because money can't make you really live. You can have all the money in the world and just be existing. And we talked about that at great detail in the last one on money idolatry. So the idea is to have wisdom. You have wisdom and you actually have access to a life that the rich don't, which they would never want to admit that, but a poor person, the school janitor who fears the Lord, who walks in the fear of the Lord and has biblical wisdom, enjoys a life they could never dream of.
Right.
Counterintuitive, but biblical truth.
Right.
So,
and this is supposed to help us to prepare for adversity, right? So if you're already thinking and living in this way, then when adversity hits, you're prepared.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So wisdom is essential for living.
Right. Just compare two people. Like, let's take the guy and the janitor, and let's take the janitor and let's take Elon Musk.
Okay.
All right. Let's say adversity hits Elon Musk. He loses everything. He loses, who knows? It's total calamity in his life. This wisdom, biblical wisdom, it teaches us that the janitor is going to make it through a total calamity better than a totally, the richest man in the world who doesn't have wisdom.
Yeah.
He'll make it through and be fine, whereas the other, who knows what could happen? You end up in a crazy house. Do they still have crazy houses? Am I allowed to say that too? They don't have them anymore, I don't think, George. I don't think they put people in places like that, do they? No, they do, because that's where they put Kanye.
They
Remember that? They put him in there.
Yeah. I don't think they call it crazy houses anymore.
Yeah. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They don't make movies like that anymore.
Yeah.
That's just not allowed.
I don't know.
I got you distracted?
Just trying to think, where are we going?
Where are we going?
Where are we going after
Where we're going, George, is
but
if adversity hits you that hard, right?
Right.
If you don't have biblical wisdom,
right.
The idea is like, who knows what will happen to you?
And this takes that humility that you were talking about in the first section, because this, like you said, it's counterintuitive.
Yeah, I mean, the example is from
why wouldn't
from chapter 5. He gave an example.
Why wouldn't you want to be happy all the time and laughing all the time and receiving compliments from people and having money and
right.
That is the wisdom of the world,
right?
That this is the way that it should be. And a lot of Christians, they can fall into that trap,
right?
That you got to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
You look at, and we kick him all the time, but you look at Joel Osteen. I mean, he's always got this goofy smile on his face, and that's kind of this persona that he presents to the world. And that's the message that he gives, that if you are God's child, then you're always going to experience favor and these blessings. And what that means is good things are always going to happen for you, right? And so if you listen to someone like him and you buy into that message, then when reality hits, because that's not reality, when bad things happen, when you don't experience, quote unquote favor,
right,
in the way that he's defining it, you're gonna experience despair.
Yeah, you will.
So you have to have that posture of humility and faith that this is true wisdom. This is the way that God has. This is the way that God has designed for his children to live in this fallen world, so that they might experience true blessings.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I can't remember. Did I use him as an illustration? I had him down in my notes. I think I had him in the section on rebuking. There's a reason why people love to listen to him.
Right, yeah.
He's never going to rebuke.
You used you used your fellow elders in that section.
I did.
I'm a little offended. Hey, it's cold.
You have it on right now. You became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You'll have it on in August as well. You have to go back and listen to it.
There's plenty of sins that you could have pointed out. I don't think being cold all the time is.
Well, you can.
I mean, that's that's definitely a weakness.
I'm here to take your confession if you'd like to. If you'd like to on air.
There's plenty of other things that you could point out that I could be rebuked for.
The Joel Osteen you brought up,
Yeah.
yes, that's exactly true. Everything you're saying, and he's never going to rebuke you.
Yeah.
So everyone loves to listen to him,
Right.
because he's like the laughter of fools in your ear.
Yeah. He'll tickle your ears, right?
Yeah.
All right. Last point, verses 13 and 14. God is sovereign over adversity in your life.
That's where it all comes to.
Right.
Yeah. Consider the work of God. And this is where he comes. Consider the work of God. Can you make straight what he's made crooked?
Mm.
I mean, I love the way that he talks.
Right.
Now you shouldn't put into the word crooked our 21st century Western understanding that, we a crooked person is a morally bankrupt person.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what he's saying about God.
Right.
The word means to be bent, like something that's bent.
Yeah.
So could you straighten out something that God bent?
Mm-hmm.
And the obvious answer is, well, man would think that they can, but you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Just a logical, thought. Give a thought exercise would be a circle is a continuous bending.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can you all of a sudden decide that that's a straight line now and make it straight?
Right.
You can't alter the fabric of the universe. And that's the idea here too.
Yeah, you're going along your life. Everything's going as planned, and then providentially something happens.
Yeah.
You get into a car wreck, or you lose your job, or just something unplanned, unexpected.
Yep.
That this is from God, as we'll see in verse 14.
Mm-hmm.
You can't unbend that.
Right. And so you're to consider it, though. To consider it is like to see in your mind, is to think about it. Mm-hmm. That's how we get this word consider. But it's more interesting, I think, if you go at it from that angle. You're to contemplate it, consider God's working in this way.
Yeah.
Not just to go, I guess, whatever is. You're to actually
right.
think about what has happened and how God has made it this way. So consider the work of God, and you should do that. Also consider his work in the Bible and how he's done things in a similar fashion.
Yeah.
With many of the Bible characters from the very beginning. Abraham is given these great promises, and he has to by faith look forward to these promises being fulfilled. He only gets to see the one son come. But even that promise that he gets to see fulfilled only comes after he's messed all this stuff up. Mm-hmm. So it's through all this adversity that he only gets to see one part of the promise. He doesn't even get to see all these other things. Yeah. And then, you have all of these other characters. Joseph.
Talk about something that God makes crooked.
Right.
I mean, Jacob's in the land. He's got his 12 sons. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, the Joseph situation happens.
Right.
Unexpected, unforeseen, and yet it's all from God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's perfect. He's like the perfect story of God's providentially working, not spinning after the fact, human sin,
right?
But ordaining even that which happens for the good of his people.
Yeah. So
you're to consider those things so that you could properly consider what's going on in your own life. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the day, again, I'm reading LSB. In the day when there is good, be of good cheer. Mm-hmm. I think that balances out earlier, verses 1 through 4. Mm-hmm. That it's better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of laughter. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that you have to walk around
right.
Depressed all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Like God has given us laughter.
Yeah,
He has given good days.
You don't have to run around like becoming a funeral crasher. Like I got to get my funeral in for the day.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that.
Roy, our oldest member.
Yeah.
He loves to go to funerals.
Yeah.
Because he says it's where you hear the best sermons.
Maybe he's trying to become the wisest man alive.
He does. He does love these verses. He was excited that you were preaching them.
Okay. I hope I didn't let him down,
because he talks about that a lot.
He does.
We've planned his funeral.
You got it all planned out?
Yeah, we talk about him. We talk about him dying. He comes and visits about once a week, and we talk about him dying probably every other week.
Smart guy. Is he gonna? Well, can we prop him up like in the old West?
Hey, maybe.
I should ask him. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You watch Unforgiven
Yeah.
when Morgan Freeman dies.
Mm-hmm.
Clint Eastwood goes through and he's propped up. Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't want to see that these days, George. We don't want to see death.
Yeah. I'm glad that you announced all your funeral plans to the church.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes the planning a lot
there
easier.
you go. It's going to be easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not going to be a life celebration.
No.
If that's what people are thinking.
A little montage.
Yeah. No.
No.
Yeah.
All right. But God does give good days, and we can rejoice in those things. I mean, Jesus was wise.
Yes.
Jesus lived with the day of his death in view.
Yeah.
Right. He knew what was coming. He still went to parties. I mean, they still called him a glutton and a drunkard because he always was going to dinners at people's houses. Like, he was a man of sorrows, but he still was a man who was happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. He was. How many times has Solomon admonished over and over that you're to enjoy today?
Right.
Like, eat and drink and be happy and enjoy what you have as a gift from God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, several times, or at least 3.
But the verses 1 through 4 remind us not to make those happiness, those sources of happiness ultimates.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the day when there is evil, consider God has made the one as well as the other.
Right.
And that can be hard for people.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that's what this whole passage has been teaching us, is that God is sovereign over even evil.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what hopelessness would we have if that wasn't true?
Mm-hmm.
If this verse wasn't true?
I don't know. I mean, you would be at the mercy of a meaningless universe, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Meaningless, random, filled with chance encounters of a variety of every kind.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could have any type of real stability.
Yeah.
I guess just tune that all out and try to be oblivious. I don't know. I don't know how you could possibly
the
live.
only way that Romans 8:28 can be true, and Christians love to quote Romans 8:28, that we know that for those who love God, all things work for their good.
Yeah.
Right. The only way that can be true is if Ecclesiastes 7:14 is true.
Right.
You can't have one without the other, because if God hasn't made the day of evil also, then, like you said, it's just chance. And how can we know that all things are going to work for our good if there's something outside of his control? Right.
Yeah. And this does make people kind of feel uncomfortable. And I think maybe it's because, I don't think maybe this applies to folks in our church, but a lot of people grow up and they live their whole lives in churches that never talk about these truths ever.
Well, you got to be happy. I mean, that's why I don't know if you've heard this criticism, but you have to put on a mask when you come to church.
Mm-hmm.
When people ask how you're doing, you have to say, I'm doing fine.
Right.
Like you don't say, well, I'm going through, some tough times.
Right.
People feel like they have to be fake.
Yeah.
Because Christians aren't supposed to have bad days. Like, it's all good. It's all blessings.
Mm-hmm.
But this verse reminds us that we're going to have bad days. Right. There's going to be those days when our path is bent, when it's crooked. But the hope is that God is sovereign over these things.
Yeah. And he is. And as strange as you think about it, as strange as it is to make a monument to the boll weevil, we do something even stranger. All right. Early on, Christians started utilizing the symbol of the cross. And that's stranger than having a monument to a boll weevil. We have a emblem, a monument to human torture,
Mm.
torture to death.
Yeah.
A torture device. And that becomes a symbol of hope and prosperity. Not earthly, but
Right.
eternal prosperity and eternal life.
Yeah.
The symbol of death, and it's a very odd thing.
Yeah.
In the way that I guess the boll weevil monument is, but yet Christians have rightly so seen that even in the worst adversity that's ever occurred on the face of the earth,
The worst day that's ever occurred on the face of the earth that God ordained.
Yeah.
Like, this was not a chance day. We talk about the cross as if it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's the worst thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Worse than the fall.
Right.
It's the worst thing that's ever happened in human history, and it's God. That was God ordained.
And it's the best example that you could ever possibly give to the great mystery that God is sovereign even over evil, because what happened was evil, and the people did it freely, and that's how Peter preaches to them that way.
Yeah.
That they crucified their own Messiah, the one who has been promised to them from ages past. They crucified him at the hands of lawless men. They're morally accountable for what they did. That's why he calls them to repent. But they did it according to the predetermined plan of God.
Right.
The day was planned long ago.
Yeah.
Before time ever existed, God had planned this day of adversity. You could say the day of adversity, I guess. And so we can see in it that God is, if that's true, and it is true, then it's true for us too.
Right.
Nothing ever happens in our life. A Christian should know this. Nothing ever happens in your life that wasn't sifted through God's hands. And who is He? He's a loving Father.
Right.
How can it be that some Christians go through enormous amounts of suffering and pain?
Right.
Enormous. I can't even begin to identify with them. But I think at the end of time, they will say that what God had worked in their life ultimately turned out in the end for their own good. I don't understand how that can be. And I'm sure when people are going through it, they can't understand how that can be.
Right.
But it's to be believed by faith. We're to see it. We're to consider it, to see it with the eyes of faith, because we don't have the perspective to see. We can't see beyond it.
Yeah. John Flavel again. He wrote a bunch about providence.
Are you reading a lot of Flavel lately?
It's just coming to my mind because he wrote a lot about providence. You probably heard this illustration used before. It may have originated with him. Providence is like a curious piece of tapestry made of 1,000 shreds, which single appear useless, but put together they represent a beautiful history to the eye. And you turn a tapestry to the backside,
right?
And it's just,
yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
You can't tell what it is, right? It's just a bunch of colored string. But you turn it around, and you see the design, and that's providence,
right?
On the when you're going through it, you don't see how it's all coming together, but on the day when Christ comes and history is brought to its end and we're glorified, we'll see how all of those pieces of providence have worked for our good.
Right. Yeah, so to kind of tie it all up together, this theme here is adversity and wisdom. They're intertwined here. So before adversity, seek the wisdom from above, which teaches us that God is sovereign, that He is good, that He loves us. And then to live in the world, we are to be seeking adversity in the places that God tells us to seek it. We can seek it in life's situations. We can seek it in His Word. We receive the wisdom of God. And that prepares us then for when the time of adversity comes and we're in it, then we can persevere in faith.
Mm.
Right? Without it, how can we persevere? If you have the wisdom of the world, I don't see how you can possibly keep going. And that's why so many people leave the faith when they encounter the problems. The problem of evil is the number one reason people leave the church.
Mm-hmm.
So before that comes, you have this wisdom that is from above, and that becomes the means by which God is able to persevere you through your adversity.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I encourage you to go back and listen to Jay's sermon from this past Sunday. It helps as a companion to this podcast. And if you think about it this week, be in prayer for Jay as he prepares for a difficult passage for this next week.
Yeah.
But if this has been beneficial for you, please make sure to like, subscribe, share. And as always, we hope that this helps you to become more and more conformed to Christ. So until next time, God bless, and we will see you for Free for All Friday.